Why am I not giving you a hero point? Well, first, it's in the name. It's called a hero point, not a murder hobo point, and I think we all need to learn a lesson here. Today, we're going to talk about hero points in Pathfinder 2e, along with some of my house rules on this episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller who is willing to bribe you with hero points if you will just pay attention to what is happening at the table. Please! Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today we're going to be doing a placeholder video for my Sunday series on the subject of hero points in Pathfinder 2e. Now, normally on Sundays, my main series is storytelling in Pathfinder 2e, but as many fans of this channel will know, recently my son had to have surgery, and by the way, he is doing really well. Thank you all for your support and encouragement. The recovery has gone great. Unfortunately, it did kind of mess with my filming schedule a little bit, and I didn't have time to do a full storytelling in Pathfinder 2e series. I am hoping to be back on my regular schedule starting next week. But I still wanted to have something out today, so I decided to talk about hero points. Hero points in Pathfinder 2e are a form of, I guess you could say, bad luck insurance. At the start of every session, a game master will give one hero point to each player, and players may earn additional hero points throughout the session for heroic deeds and other really amazing actions that they perform. And then players can spend hero points in order to get certain bonuses and benefits during the course of play. Now, hero points are a relatively simple mechanic, and Paizo has not given us a lot of content around hero points, so today we're going to dive into what Paizo has given us for hero points, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the house rules I use at my gaming table that has allowed my group to kind of expand how hero points impact play. So I invite you to come along and be a part of that conversation. And did you know that you are entitled to a hero point just by liking this video, sharing it, or subscribing to my channel? And you'll definitely get a hero point if you jump into the conversation down in the comments section and offer your own thoughts and insights. That's completely legitimate. I swear Paizo put that in the rules. Also, you can check out my free Discord and my Patreon. Those are linked in the video description as well. But let's get started. Let's start out with the basics and talk about what hero points are and where you can find information on hero points. The Pathfinder 2e Core Rulebook talks about hero points in a couple of different locations, specifically pages 29 and 467, though to be honest, the majority of the information you're going to want to know is on page 467, and there is another paragraph of information in the Game Mastery Guide on page 9, though again to be honest, there's really not a lot here. However, there is one more reference that I would like to point out for someone interested in talking about hero points, and that is the Fortune and Misfortune sidebar found on page 449 of the Pathfinder 2e Core Rulebook. Why? Well, one of the uses of hero points has the Fortune trait, which means you want to be aware of what the rules for Fortune and Misfortune are when you decide to make use of hero points, because those traits can be relevant, and that hero point might interact with another effect in peculiar ways. Now, the basics of hero points are this. At the start of every session, Game Masters will give one hero point to every player at the table, and then during the course of play, players can earn additional hero points for heroic deeds or other important actions that they might take during the game. And yes, that is a little bit vague, but we'll talk about that more later. Now, there is a cap on the number of hero points that a character can possess. You can have a maximum of 3 hero points at any point in time. and if you would earn more hero points, those excess hero points are simply lost. And that rule kind of exists to encourage players to spend their hero points and not try to hoard them or hold on to them for an entire session. The rules do specifically note that you lose any accumulated hero points at the end of a session, and at the next session you start again with a single hero point. Also, as mentioned, some of the uses of hero points do have the fortune effect, and it is worth noting in Pathfinder 2e that only a single fortune effect can apply to a single roll at a time, meaning that you cannot spend multiple hero points on the same roll. To be honest, that's a rule that I tend to forget. But what can you use hero points for? Well, in the core game, there are two options here. The first option is very simple. This is the one with the fortune trait. You can spend a hero point to re-roll any particular check. So basically, if you would roll a d20, you can spend a hero point and re-roll that d20 if you so desire. And as with most fortune effects in this game, you can choose to make that re-roll after you know the outcome of the initial roll. So for example, you could roll a saving throw, and then once you find out that you have failed or critically failed that saving throw, you can then decide, okay, I would like to spend a hero point to re-roll that save and hopefully get a better result, because it is important to note, when you use the hero point re-roll, you do have to take the second roll regardless of what it is. The other option for hero points is basically to protect your character from dying. If your character is unconscious and dying, you can spend all of your hero points, minimum of 1, but if you have 3, you're spending all 3, and you will immediately stabilize at 0 hit points, lose the dying condition, and you will not gain the wounded condition when you use hero points this way. Please note, this doesn't negate a pre-existing wounded condition, but you wouldn't gain wounded from this particular instance where your character would have been dying. So you can see from these two uses that Paizo has basically built some bad luck insurance into the game by giving characters the opportunity to re-roll bad d20 rolls or to potentially save their character from death through the expenditure of hero points. And, well, I guess that's all the video, because that's all Paizo gives us. Okay, so you can kind of tell that hero points are a very simple addition to Pathfinder 2e, and while they are certainly a powerful form of bad luck insurance, they don't do much else. And I do feel like hero points is one of those areas of the game where really there's more that could have been done here, and I think it is worth expanding upon to make them more impactful and more meaningful in play. So from this point in the video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into some options for expanding hero points and some of the things that you might consider using them for to make them a little more interesting. I'm going to start with an option that Paizo has actually published, and then I'm going to move through a few ideas that I've picked up from other content creators, and then finally I'm going to talk about the big change that I use at my table that has been particularly successful. Up first, let's talk about the Hero Point Deck that Paizo published. So I picked this up about 5 months ago, essentially on a whim. I was kind of in one of those situations where if I added just a little bit more to the cart, I got a huge discount on shipping, and I needed something to push me over that limit, and hey, this qualified. So I mostly picked this up just to see what Paizo had done, but Paizo does offer the Hero Point Deck as a way of expanding what hero points can do inside your game. There are 30 different hero point cards in the deck, and each of them comes with a unique effect that can be triggered by spending a hero point. So essentially what the Hero Point Deck does is it gives you new options for how you use your hero points. Instead of the lucky reroll, instead of saving yourself from death, you could do something like this card, which is Distract Foe. Each card will have a trigger condition for when and how that hero point card can be activated, and if that condition is met, you spend your hero point, and you get whatever the effect might be. In the case of Distract Foe, If an enemy would attack someone within 30 feet of you, you can spend a hero point to make that foe fascinated with you until they either make the decision to attack you or combat ends. So essentially, you could use this card and spend a hero point to pull some of the attention off one of your allies to yourself if your ally was in danger. Now, my group has been using the hero point cards for a little while, and Paizo does give you several different options inside of the deck. I would encourage you to kind of play around with the options and see what you think is the best fit for your gaming table. The base version involves dealing out hero point cards to the different players, and then there's another optional version where instead of dealing specific cards to players, you lay out 3 cards in front of players, and any player can spend a hero point to get one of the cards that's out on the table. When I presented the options to my players, they actually liked the one where the cards were dealt out on the table and everyone could see all 3 options. And my players get really, really excited when those cards get dealt out. Like, it's a moment at my table every week. Ooh, get the hero point cards. Let's see what it is. Ooh, that's going to be a good one. My players love seeing those cards flip over and seeing kind of the extra options that get added to the game. Which is a little bit funny because then my players completely forget that they're on the table and never spend the hero points, even if the cards would be useful. I'm honestly thinking about switching back to dealing out specific cards to players, just because I feel like the cards might get used more that way. But if you do try out the Hero Point deck, I would encourage you to try it out a few different ways and see what is most beneficial to your table. If nothing else, the Hero Point deck adds a nice random twist to the impact of hero points, and I think that you never know what you're going to get aspect of the Hero Point deck is exciting, so I have enjoyed having this product at my table. Now I want to move on to some other options for things you can do at your gaming table to kind of expand on hero points. And the next 2 options I'm going to talk about, I honestly got from some other content creators, but I will be honest, I don't remember who. I really wish I could give credit where credit is due here, and if somebody knows where either of these ideas comes from, if you can point back to the original source, by all means, throw that into the comments down below, and I will be sure to link the appropriate source in the video description. These are somewhat old ideas that I have heard from other content creators, and I really like them, and I applied them to hero points in my game. And that is the options, I know a guy, and so you're saying there's a chance. Okay, so let me set up the justification for these. One of the things I've noticed for hero points is that quite often they are combat-centric. Yes, the fortune reroll can apply to potentially any roll of a d20, but quite often hero points tend to land only in combat, and they don't see use in other areas of the game, which feels a little sad for me. And one of the ways that I've tried to address that is by giving players some options to spend hero points during other portions of the game. And that comes in the form of those 2 quotes that I just gave you. The first one is, I know a guy. Essentially the way this works is one of my players can spend a hero point to say, I know a guy, and introduce an NPC into the story that might be helpful to the party. Now it is worth noting I do have some guidelines on how this works. First off, the NPC is either at the party's level or slightly below, depending on the character level and the situation, what would be appropriate there. And the NPC has a starting attitude of neutral towards whoever it is that knows them in the party, whoever spent the hero point. Finally, that NPC that the player decides to introduce, they essentially get to pick a specific skill or ability that that NPC has that could be helpful to the party. So, for example, if the characters are trying to track down information on a particular fiend, one player might say, hey, I know a guy, and spend a hero point to introduce an NPC that is associated with a local church and has a particularly strong religion skill. They give me a brief description of the NPC, and I work them into the game, and they can attempt to persuade that NPC to try to help them find whatever information that they need. The second option that I give my players is, so you're saying there's a chance. And yes, that quote is directly stolen from the movie Dumb and Dumber. No shame. I'm not even going to pretend I didn't do that. Basically, what this does is it allows a player to modify a scene in some fashion where they can attempt a skill check that they normally would not be able to do otherwise. So for an example of how this ability might be used, let's say a character is trying to scale a wall, or maybe get down when they're trapped on top of a wall, and so they spend a hero point, and then look over and notice, hey, just so happens there's a rope there that I might be able to use. They still have to make the appropriate skill checks in order to do whatever it is they want to do, but I allow them to make a slight modification to the scene so that there's a chance for them to do whatever it is they're interested in. Maybe a door doesn't quite close properly, or maybe there's a loud noise creating just a momentary distraction so you can try to dive for cover and hide. The important thing in this moment is, there's a chance. Now, I do have some guidelines on how this ability is used. Typically, if a character wants to use, so you're saying there's a chance, however they modify the scene, the skill check that they attempt as a result of that hero point expenditure typically is going to have a DC of very hard for that character's level. So, it's not going to be easy, there's just a chance. But now I would like to move on to the main modification that I use for hero points at my gaming table, and I'll go ahead and tell you that these, I do know the source that they're inspired from. First, one of the sources of inspiration is Jason Bowman from Paizo. I have seen some of the games that he runs, and I did pick up some pointers from him. Additionally, I pull some inspiration from an old White Wolf game called Exalted, and a mechanic that that game had called stunt dice. I'm not going to get into exactly what stunt dice are, but if you are familiar with that system, you may hear a lot of similarities as I describe how I use hero points at my gaming table. Now, the first thing I want to note on how I use hero points at my gaming table is I do think it's important to have some kind of physical token that your players can hold on to and use as a reminder that they have hero points. I have some cheap metallic coins that I got off of Amazon that I use as hero points at my gaming table, though almost anything could be used in this place. You could use plastic gems, you could use cards, you could use Pathfinder Society coins. That's actually something I've considered doing in the past. I've just never collected them, but if I had them, I'd totally use them that way. And I keep my hero points in a nice Hero Point Yoda cup. And this Hero Point Yoda cup is very important in introducing one of the important changes at my gaming table. You see, thanks to the inspiration of Jason Bowman, I don't just have a Hero Point cup, I also have a Villain Point cup. I'm honestly not sure where my mom found these crazy Star Wars cups at, but I love these things and they're one of my favorite gifts that she ever gave me. But yes, I have both hero points and villain points, which are available for use at my gaming table. Obviously, the hero points go to my players, and the villain points go to me for use with the monsters. But now for the next modification. Let's say one of my players decides they want to spend a hero point. When they spend their hero point, it does not go back in the hero point cup, it goes in the villain cup instead. It becomes a resource that can potentially be given to me. By the same token, if I spend a villain point, that point is then put in the hero point cup and is now available as a resource to my players instead. So one of the things that I have done to modify the use of hero points in my game is I've created a sort of economy where the hero points and villain points go back and forth, and sometimes are available to players, sometimes are available to me as the game master. And that creates a very fun dynamic. Both my players and myself really have to think about when and how we want to use our hero points, because those resources are going to change hands between both sides of the Game Master screen. And there is a second element that comes in to how the hero points and villain points are both distributed and used. You see, in my group, in order to get a hero point or a villain point, you must be nominated for a hero point. So in my group, we have specific guidelines for what can qualify for a hero point. It can be a particularly daring action, it can be a particularly heroic moment, it can be just really good roleplay. If someone does something that elevates the game, makes it more enjoyable, if someone does something that just brings people into the game and makes it more exciting, then anyone in the table can nominate that player for a hero point. Or conversely, if I am killing it as a game master and my villains are just amazing and my players absolutely hate what I'm doing but they have to admit it's still cool, they can nominate me for a villain point. So if a player says or does something cool and they get nominated for a hero point, then I as the game master will award them 1 hero point out of the Hero Point Cup. By the same token, if one of the players nominates me for a villain point, and usually when they do, everyone around the table is like, yeah, that was cool, we hate you, Mark, I get a villain point out of the Villain Point Cup. I have found that my players really enjoy the experience of being able to nominate other players, and occasionally me, for the hero points and the villain points. Being able to reward your fellow players and say, that was really cool, hero point, my players love that. And they might not like giving the Game Master a reroll, but they even enjoy pointing out when I, as the Game Master, do something cool with one of the villains. So I think one of the best modifications for hero points in Pathfinder 2e is just simply nominating people for hero points. Talk to your group about what the guidelines for hero points in your group will be, and then let your players nominate other players when they think they've earned a hero point, and I guarantee you, you will get some almost instantaneous engagement with your game. And that, by the way, is actually the secret goal of this entire thing for me as a storyteller. This system that I have of hero points and villain points, I've actually been using with a number of games for a while. It goes back through Pathfinder 1st Edition and other games that I have played. Like I said, I originally pulled this from the stunt dice mechanic in Exalted. The reason I use this mechanic is it kind of bribes my players to pay attention to the game. You see, one of the most important rules in all of this is I will not award a hero point if no one nominates the hero point. And a player cannot nominate themselves. Ergo, if everyone around the table is playing on their phones or if they're distracted by side conversations, if people are doing the random things that just kind of mess up your focus, it doesn't matter how cool one player's action was. If no one nominates them, well, they don't get a hero point for it. And essentially what I have done is I've turned hero points into sort of a way of bribing my players into paying attention to the game, because they know if we want to get hero points, we have to pay attention to what everyone else is doing, and by bribing my players to pay attention, it helps the game to move a lot faster. Seriously, every game master out there, you know the pain of the player who goes, wait, what's going on? So trust me when I say using a nomination system for hero points is an easy way to turn hero points into a very effective and engaging element in the game, and also into an effective tool for managing the game and allowing play to move much more quickly. But those are some of my thoughts on hero points. Let me turn the conversation over to you. How does your table use hero points? And have you tried anything that I've mentioned in this video, or is there something else that you do at your table? Let me know in the comments down below. And like always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like or a share. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can check out my free Discord and my Patreon. Both of those are linked in the video description down below. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.